Time now for a look at the day's top business news. We're going to start with the ongoing conflict between Washington and the Chinese tech giant Huawei, as a legal challenge now looms in the United States. To tell us more, we're joined on set by our business editor, Brian Quinn. Brian.
Eve, Huawei has filed a motion asking a U.S. federal court to declare unconstitutional a law banning the company's equipment from American agencies and their contractors. It's Huawei's latest attempt to fight back against a concentrated effort from the Trump administration to push it out of global markets. Washington says Huawei's ties to the Chinese government make it a cyber espionage threat and has leaned on its Western allies to follow suit in banning the company from their forthcoming 5G data networks. Earlier in May, the U.S. Commerce Department put Huawei on a trade blacklist that forbids American companies from supplying it with components in a further escalation. Huawei says U.S. politicians are using cybersecurity as a cover for other aims as the race to dominate the new 5G landscape heats up.
These actions will do nothing to make networks more secure. They provide a false sense of security and distract attention from the real challenges we face.
Well, that Commerce Department ban cuts Huawei off from key U.S. chip makers and also from Google's Android operating system, that a major blow to the company's consumer smartphone business. Washington has issued a 90-day delay on that ban in a bid to minimize disruption, as it threatens not just Huawei, but its U.S. suppliers as well. France 24 China correspondent Charles Pellegrin has been following the story. He says Huawei's been preparing for just this kind of situation.
They have had a plan B for years. They've been working on building their own processors and own microchips through their subsidiary HiSilicon. They're also working on their own operational system called Hongmeng to replace Android if ever they can't use it anymore. So basically, this is the plan B, and the executives at Huawei are keen on saying that this is just a plan B. They much rather be able to not disrupt their supply chain and really see kind of a decoupling of the Chinese and American economies.
I'm checking in on the markets now. Asian indexes mostly on the decline Wednesday amid a global sell-off tied to the ongoing U.S.-China trade war and a slowing Chinese economy. The Nikkei finishing the day down nearly 1.2%. Chinese indexes mixed as shares in rare earth mineral firms surge after a threat from Beijing to ban their exports to the U.S. Hong Kong's Hang Seng down just slightly. The Shanghai Composite up 0.3%. Samsung shares down around 2% in Seoul. The Kospi ending the day down right around 0.8%. European indexes following a similar trend. Political tensions in the mix as well. London's FTSE 100 opening the day down around 0.2%. CAC 40 here in Paris down over 1% as new data here in France shows inflation and growth slowing. The DAX down nearly 1% in Frankfurt. The FTSE MIB in Milan not too far behind as the EU considers disciplinary fines on Rome for excessive budget deficit. Next, General Electric's announcement that it plans to cut roughly 1,000 jobs at its Belfort plant in eastern France comes as a major blow to the site's workers. But it doesn't come as a big surprise. The company is facing a major slump in worldwide demand for the gas turbines produced there. Just 4 years after acquiring French industrial giant Alstom's energy business, the move is proving a disastrous one for GE. Yuka Royer has the details.
Gas turbines are stalling. In France, only 29 units were produced last year, less than a third of around 100 made 10 years ago, all of them in Belfort in the east of the country. This as the global gas turbine market is expected to shrink by 40% by 2022.
The gas turbine market has collapsed. Perhaps in a few decades, when a transition from coal-based power has really started, we'll see renewed demand. But that's not happening today.
The Belfort plant's owner, General Electric, wants to cut around 800 jobs at the site's gas power unit and possibly 250 other support positions. That's about a quarter of the total number of staff there. The American industrial giant has posted 2 straight years of losses. Its power plant unit lost a staggering $22.8 billion last year. When it bought the factory from Alstom in 2015, GE pledged to create 1,000 jobs to win backing for the deal from the French government. Falling well short of that commitment, the company created just 25 jobs and in February agreed to pay a €50 million fine. Vowing to fight to protect Belford's workers, the French government says it wants to use the compensation money paid by GE to support new projects in areas such as aeronautics and wind power.
We want the French president to take strong decisions because the energy sector depends a lot on public orders from the likes of EDF.
It was Emmanuel Macron himself who oversaw the GE's deal with Alstom as economy minister at the time.
And finally, for business, how much would you pay for a laptop you knew was riddled with malware? $1.3 million sound about right? Normally, people pay to keep viruses off their computers, but a conceptual art piece called The Persistence of Chaos is the exception. It's a Samsung laptop loaded with 6 of the most infamous and destructive malware programs ever devised. From the WannaCry ransomware that caused over $4 billion in damage, briefly crippling the UK's National Health Service while it infected over 200,000 computers across 150 countries, to the black energy Trojan horse that allowed hackers to knock out Ukraine's electric grid in 2015. The laptop is functionally isolated from spreading its viruses. Not to worry, though, Eve. There's plenty of worse stuff out now these days. Those are actually all rather vintage at this moment.
Vintage but costly, Brian. Apparently, you just got a lot of raised eyebrows for that story from this side of the newsroom.
That's very true.
Brian Quinn with our business update. Thanks a lot for that.